It
It
also lets you
is.
store in the cloud, I think. You can store these recordings.
Yeah, I think there's two options, or there's multiple options, but it's really nice how it records actually because it breaks down. It gives you kind of a video file, but then it also gives you, I think, like a separate audio file, and it kind of splits it up, so it's already broken into pieces for you afterwards.
Okay.
Yep. So the I don't know. I guess where we could start. I guess there's how do we start as a course together that we're going to do ourselves together? That's
Yeah.
Catch
basically
me
the
up a little bit. You know, I've obviously been quite out of the loop, and I actually did just now log into Slack for the first time, and like I haven't, you know, I just sort of jumped off of all my Slack activity, but in general, I mean, I'd love to just hear any kind of summaries of how you guys got to this point. And I can catch you up also a little bit on my side.
Well, I can go first. I can say, I
Yeah.
guess Slack stuff for Metacogs types thing has been pretty slow. For the most part, it's all of us that are here right now, and even that, it's just kind of been little bits of chit chat and maybe slight little probes for potential. So when Ted told us that Howard was thinking of likely doing another course, then we started brainstorming about how we might augment it with Minddamp stuff, because he's likely doing cooperation literacies again, but we were all sort of hoping that it would be Minddamp instead. So that's
And it still could be.
Oh, okay.
If we overwhelm him with fine and superior DIGO tools and mind map work, he might be willing to do it.
I wanted to just interject something Ted and I discussed very briefly this past week, but it kind of relates, and I'm just wondering, Robert and Roland, your thoughts or opinion about the Howard course and the timing of it, and sort of trying to, I guess, as far as this group gathering, trying to somehow coordinate or synchronize. And the full thought is, I think given the, you know, if my schedule, you know, with the family and stuff, it's already, a lot of it's blocked out, and I'm already committing now to another course. So personally, I would prefer it to be, you know, next year at some point, but I'm just wondering where you guys are at with that.
For Howard's course, in fact.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought Howard's, I think Ted knows most about that.
Well, it's constantly having to cajole him into doing it. He's mostly just painting pictures out in the backyard and doing his pataphysical stuff with his buddies. So he's open. Originally, we talked about doing it in the fall. His only concern is that he wants 25 paying co-learners.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him I didn't think that would be any problem in between a Twitter blurb and a Facebook blurb and everybody telling people in the networks. I thought that was going to be fairly simple. And at this point, it's just a matter of timing. He really doesn't care. He's like me. We're all retired, so every day is Saturday and Sunday for us. But given where we're at, I think looking at it toward the middle of January or February might make more sense, simply because it gives us time to play around with teaching, establishing a teaching module for some of the stuff that we've been doing. And also because we do the big state of the world thing the first 2 weeks in January in the well. So I'll be tied into that. So I didn't have a problem pushing it off. Howard doesn't care. I'm dragging him into doing it anyway. I think he likes the co-op lit class just because he's got so much stuff already loaded for that in terms of presentation. My own particular feeling was that, hey Jim, my own feeling was that I personally wanted to see the Minddamp Classic and simply to get everything updated, because it's been 6 years since we did it. And there's been a lot of tools and platforms that have come available. And it would just be nice to see that all together. And also, I think almost every alumnus has taken co-op lit 2 or 3 times. So just from a selfish perspective, I like the idea of it. But co-op lit, everybody's big on to save the world and find a platform to do it. And so cooperation overseas is good too.
Yeah.
Hi, Jim. I didn't meet you before. It's Charlie here in Zurich, Switzerland.
Alors, on parle français, allemand, italien?
English, please.
English.
I am American. Been here 7 years.
Okay, well.
Good one. Yeah, I didn't make the time for German yet, but I'm in the German-speaking part of Switzerland. And where are you, by the way?
North Carolina.
Okay.
Around western North Carolina, Asheville.
All right.
I grew up in Asheville.
That's not my fault.
No?
But you did grow up, Ted.
You had to in Asheville. They were going to butt fuck you.
Oh.
Those people are seriously woodsy.
Seriously, what?
Woodsy. Yeah. The old men used to try and give us moonshine.
Yeah, well, we're now a beer capital. We have 27 microbreweries for a population of 89,000 people.
Not bad.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, well, that's it seems to be the main major for millennials was IPA beers.
Yeah,
they all went into brewing.
Yeah, hoppy IPA beers is the thing.
Yeah, they're disgusting. I mean, if you actually like beer, they're horrible.
Although we have the best Belgian sours I've tasted anywhere other than in Belgium.
Ooh, there you go, Roland. You're gonna have to go over there.
Well, I'm afraid I'm one of those Belgians who hardly drink any beer. So I more or less stopped drinking alcohol.
That's like being from Silicon Valley and not knowing how to use a computer. What's the matter with you?
Yes, exactly.
Or not taking psychedelics.
That's okay.
Yes, I'm focusing on cyber psychedelics now.
Ernst and I have every intention of changing your attitude toward beer when we eventually get.
You might have to go there and do it, though.
I'm going to. Ernst and I are going to do a 10-day monastery tour. We're going to drag Roland with us.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Those monks know what they're doing with beer.
So Jim, just before you came on, I had sort of put the open question to this open learning gathering because I've been out of the loop, this particular loop with these guys for quite some months. So I was just hearing a little bit about I guess we didn't get into it. We also were just talking about Howard and potential schedule for another course. And so that's where we got to.
Okay, thanks.
And we were originally had talked about doing it in the fall. Now we're thinking about in the winter, and mainly because you have to really control how to teach one of these things, and also because Robert and Roland and I got some classes we want to teach, and we thought we would teach them to ourselves first in some kind of a module. So that's what this Slack forum is about: is how to create the tools and everything to go about teaching, and then gives us the rest of the year to play with it. Robert's keen on maps, and Roland's keen on journalism, and I'm keen on knowledge gardens.
Yeah, you'll also notice from our call last week, it's very much sort of inspired in that direction as well, where if you click on the channels, you'll see there's an AI one and intelligence augmentation one. So it's sort of I think it was just Jim and Roland and I last week, I forget, but sort of what we were talking about the last time, about how to host kind of a potentially an AI course, learning how to actually mess around with it.
Well, and there's no reason that we can't do it. We don't have to wait for Howard to do it. If he wants to do co-op learning, we can do that. We probably have knowledge of that at our fingertips over the last couple of years than anybody else.
Something worth mentioning that it's sort of still a footnote or off to the side, but so and also Jim, for your information, I'm working with at the moment just the middle school campus of the Zurich International School, and I'm just working one-on-one with a few students, coaching, especially with a focus on English writing. But I think that and I'm starting to make some like LinkedIn connections and about to have maybe some coffees with some of the staff, not just teachers, but also admin, and some of the digital admin. But it's a very slow moving conversation and everybody's busy with other things. But my idea is not focused so much anyway, but kind of sowing some seeds and gathering some, trying to get more focused on some digital literacy there at the school, maybe in the form of simply one-on-one or growing it into a workshop or even a program at some point. So I think I just mentioned that here because as I mentioned some months back earlier in the year, it's just that I'm there, I'm literally there, and I know I'm getting to know more of these people. And I think there is potential, but obviously it all has to be organized and integrated into the rhythm over there. So. But it could be a playground or sandbox kind of thing.
But actually, I would say the main focus to begin with is sort of what we were talking about last week as well, with the new media reader and some of those readings. So that's sort of what I was hoping would be kind of an initial focus the next few weeks, is creating a syllabus together. Maybe we don't even call it a syllabus, it's just a list of readings per week, and then sort of mind map or blog about these individual little articles, and then have meetings like this at the have meetings like this at the end of the week, basically, to either combine mind maps or something like that. And then that would kind of build to also have sort of a meta conversation about what tools are we using, are they facilitating this, and what other tools might we use. So if you explore around some of the Slack channels, you'll see kind of my curation of some very similar syllabuses, and then also some thinking on what kind of tool ecosystem we could use together. That would kind of bring it all together into kind of one kind of coherent learning system, sort of.
I liked hypothesis. That worked well.
So we would actually use, we would read one of the chapters, such as Ted Nelson's, the chapter about Ted Nelson, and then use MetaMap to make a mind map about it, and use other tools such as Digo and I don't know what exactly was mentioned, and see how far that gets us, something like that.
Yeah, and then maybe not even a whole chapter, maybe just a simple article that we agree on, because
yes,
so it stays lightweight and not like a big hassle for us to stay up, like kind of in sync with each other.
What is this new media reader? Is that something I should know about?
Yes, he's here somewhere. One moment. It's a very thick book, but in the Metacourse thing, actually, Robert put a number of links where you can find the chapters in PDF.
Okay, cool.
Because it's pretty expensive. It's pretty thick and it's pretty expensive. It's by MIT, and it are foundational texts by Vannevar Bush, Licklider, and Ted Nelson, and many others.
So it covers what period roughly, or when is it? Is it pretty new, but it's older stuff?
It seems to be old stuff like Ted Nelson and other guys from the 60s and the 70s, even from the 40s, from the
Okay.
previous century. But
Cool.
if you read it carefully, you'll notice that a number of the potentials which those pioneers saw have still not been realized because of, I don't know, because of the way things went, because of commercialism, because of other reasons. But there's still a lot to invent or to create if you read those ancient texts.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, and if you look in the general channel in the new Slack, it has kind of links to everything, including the PDF version.
And what's interesting is tech as it exists today is coming up to as that these old guys were right. And you're seeing more and more of these people going, well, we got to go back to the drawing board. Like hypertext has never been used like that, never intended to be used as a two-way communication vehicle. And nobody's ever come close to Doug Engelbert's vision. It just was immediately co-opted by commerce, just like Comdex was. And the killer word is scale. I've gotten to where if I hear that now, because it's just how can I make a profit off your idea.
Worth mentioning that I'm actually attended my first hackathon today, the conclusion of the Hack Zurich, which is apparently, however they measure it, the biggest hackathon in Europe. It's been going for, I don't know, 5 or more years. So I just sort of popped into part of the finalists' pitches and kind of got out before the awards ceremony. But so that was very cool. And that's like the team, or more or less the organization that's been doing that, just created, starting last year, the Digital Festival. It's basically a conference, kind of more like a corporate, semi-mainstream, but with some pretty juicy people and elements. Without going into it, that was all week this week, and I had the pleasure to shuttle the keynote speakers from the hotel to the venue, so I got to hang out with some of these big wigs. It was cool. So anyway, I'm
nice.
swimming in all of this kind of new digital stuff, and also overlapping with that, and I checked out a little bit, was the Finance 2.0, the cryptocurrency kind of bankers and insurance gathering, especially. There was also the ICO summit, which was like a few blocks away. But I didn't go there, but it was all these people were swimming all around town this week. So ...
Yeah.
Yeah, about the kind of, sorry to jump back, but about the kind of the Engelbarts and Nelsons and unrealized visions, I guess that's sort of they live in kind of the affordances layer, and that's sort of my thinking, is that we can combine a bunch of these different tools that aren't really nicely integrated together, but through a bit of kind of social practice, we might be able to kind of implement some of these affordances that don't exist yet, just by using some of these tools together instead of trying to have one tool that does it all.
Maybe a simple approach would be to start a Google Doc where we can just all comment and end up with an outline of the tools that we want. Like one of the things that I like about Zoom is you can do breakout rooms. So when you get into a larger situation of, say, more than 10 people, you can break out into various subgroups to work on different things and then come back. So that's nice. And I had to research your question earlier today, Robert, but it does turn out that you can take the recordings out of Zoom and use them in a number of different formats, so they're portable.
Does that include the breakout rooms, Ted?
My hunch is that the recording will parcel out breakout rooms as a separate thing, but I'm not positive about that. I'll have to go and double check on that. But usually the breakout rooms are sort of like a real fast work group, and then you bring it back into the main session where you can put it all together. And also Zoom has I don't think Zoom has a whiteboard. There are ways to do it though. You can do whiteboards from a screen share. That's the advantage of Big Blue Button. Is Big Blue Button has breakout rooms, recording sessions, chat, and whiteboards. So it's got close to everything, and it's open source, so it's in keeping with our sort of general feeling about things.
Yeah, well, in terms of live sessions as well, I'm very interested in continuing experiments with the MetaMaps plus Slack integration so that we can have kind of a linear chat stream, but then have any of that populate into a map and kind of represent a live concept map that we're all sort of looking at as well. It's like a second screen experience.
Yeah, there's like, I don't know if you've looked at Canvas. It's an LMS learning management system, but it's great. The problem is you have to have an EDU address to use it. And I think Charlie has sort of a workaround for that. But
I can get you guys EDU addresses. I have one. I don't know if that would allow me to create something you guys can use without one, but
yeah. Well, I just think we want to think about it going forward. If Metacogs finds teaching to be a central focus of what we would be doing, then we probably want to get an EDU address so we could use, because Big Blue Button wants, also is a teacher school LMS system. I found a sneak around for that. If I register as a developer, I can go get it all, but I have to do it on Ubuntu. So apparently they do all their programming in Linux.
Well, I'm glad to extend the offer that was extended to me, which is, and I'm pretty sure there'll be no markup or anything, but for $100, you can have a .edu email address, which allows you to get and do a bunch of things.
We might want to think about that for Metacogs. Anyway, more pertinent though, keep Robert on track, or keep us on track. Let's get a Google Doc or something that organizes the tools.
Yeah, actually just today I was, have you heard of Dropbox Paper?
Yeah.
Yeah, just today I was experimenting with it because I realized it now too has a Slack integration. And if you used Hackpad a while ago, it's now part of it. They got bought, and now that's what Paper is. And it's actually pretty slick in terms of you can kind of just create a new document inline while writing another document and just kind of hyperlink back and forth. And it also nicely integrates lots of different apps. Like you can just put a tweet link and it shows it, or if you use InVision, that kind of prototyping thing, it can embed it nice and easy. So yeah, I was thinking that something like that. So I have all those syllabuses already, just kind of need to put them in a pile and see how they overlap and how maybe one's a little more comprehensive in one area, and then yeah, kind of.
Also, just a caveat about Dropbox or any of those. I don't like being held hostage to the cloud, so you want to be careful that you can export and that you don't get into some kind of storage cost situation. So I I put stuff on Dropbox so I can share back and forth, but then I take it all off. So I purposely keep I always initiate, create my own documents, and then share them in the cloud, but then take them back out of the cloud. I'm just very anal about that.
Yeah.
But it keeps limits too.
Did you say that there's an updated version to the social media classroom? Because I think a part of what we were planning to do here was update all the tools for the Rheingold U kind of courses if they could use to be updated, or maybe not, I don't know. But yeah, because it seems like during the courses you're typically asked to do blogging or social bookmarking and that sort of thing. So those are the type of tools I was thinking of making sure that we addressed each of those points.
Yeah. Well, it's still in the same format, but don't think of it as social media. Think of it as Holocene, because that's where it's all been ported off to. And Sam Rose still controls that until we decide to do a co-op or whatever. So, I mean, right now where it stands is Howard's happy to give it to us as a co-op. And Sam is happy to help us by giving us all the files so we can take it to another server. And I have a sort of a grand strategy of how we can pull that off. But I haven't been thinking about doing that until next year either. I mean, initially, Sam has a $250 a month fee that Howard's been paying. And Sam and Howard were getting a little antsy about that, and we were thinking of paying for that privately, and then I didn't like that. The more I thought about it, the more I felt like I didn't want to get beholden to any one person or group. So that got me thinking along the lines of co-op, which I think is considered open source. So I'm still pursuing the co-op idea. I got a lot of good feedback from a lot of alumni that were very happy to give money for it and like the idea. Howard likes it a lot. So I think that's the right way to go with that. And then what we have to come up, what we need to address, and Sam Rose is the guy to address it, is porting all of the social media material over to the new site. And that all came up because Sam did do a new update on the current Holocene site, the alumni site. So we are in 2.0, but it still looks the same. It's more code in the background.
And are you talking about the system that had like a forum as well as a wiki as well as a, or are you talking about this Holocene, which looks to be like I forget what it's called, like a Disqus forum or something like that?
It is, yeah, it is a Disqus forum. And social media, that still all exists exactly like there are 16 or 17 classes that are iterations. What's that?
Sorry, it's just a phone here in my room.
Well, step on it. So anyway, I think there are 17 separate classes now that exist in SML or SMC. So my idea was, if we're successful in creating a co-op, bring all of those 17 classes over to the main site, bring the core content over to the main site. And then there would just be some Creative Commons licensing issues. A lot of the material we voted on as being public, and then a lot of the material we voted on being private, which meant you didn't have permission to quote or copy and paste. But what's public is all in the forums and in the wikis. And Roland might remember, I'd completely forgotten. We got all carried away after the second year, and we created this monster wiki repository that a few educators helped us set up. And I'd forgotten all about it, and then I ran into it on one. It's sitting on, I think, the first Monday class. But anyway, I got my little fingers on all that. I think, do you remember, Roland? I think we called it the Knowledge Repository Wiki or something. But we had taken, I think, about 4 classes from Howard, and then we just thought, wow, we should just pull all the information together in one place. So we started bringing everything from the 4 classes into one. We called it a Knowledge Repository. And then nothing's been really done with that since, and there's been another 13 classes.
So if I understand, that's kind of a template for merging the wikis of all the classes.
Yep. Yeah, the template already exists, and it exists with best practices and all kinds of how-tos, and what the correct way to post a new item, how to edit, all of that. So the whole framework is there already with a tremendous amount of content, but overwhelming amount of content has been created since. And so at some point, it's all gold, so we should put it all together. And I just think the best way to do that is through the co-op.
And you already have access to that.
I've always had access to it. I'm the
Right.
administrator
Okay.
of all
I
of it.
thought so. So I'm wondering, I mean, since you pointed out that pretty significant piece, maybe it's not really a piece, it's a repository. I mean, that would be pretty cool jumping off point to kind of, for us to work with and continue,
Well,
even without the...
had you stayed with us, Charlie, you would have found it in Slack already.
Oh, cool. Oh, good. Well then, thank you.
I brought it over to Slack.
Great. Okay. No,
But yeah, so that's all active. And I don't think it requires a sign. If you've tried to go back and look at any of Howard's classes, the original, every class has a wiki that's public that anybody can read, and within that wiki, a lot of reference materials. Like you can find all of the Linkletter and Geneva Bush and Engelbart, all that material is all in the wiki, so it's all readable. And I'm pretty sure we did the knowledge repository that way too. We put it in the wiki. Otherwise, you have to be able to sign in to the rest of the classes in order to see the forums and the comments and the bookmarking.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But that wiki itself, which obviously involves a lot of parts, would we be able to use it and to grow it, or could it be copied into a place where we can actually work on it?
Well, yes.
Is that a relevant question? I don't know.
Yes, and there's some ethical discussion that should be had. The wiki exists for the alumni and was created by the alumni and was created within the alumni sites, but we made it editable and public. So I think that leaves it, it's an open framework and it's easy to add to. Where the issue, and we talked about this about a year ago, where the issue becomes a little bit fine-tuning is bringing in the new material from the other classes, and addressing what's fair material to be shared and what's really considered personal or private. It was easy 5 years ago or 6 years ago to ask the alumni for a consensus because there were only about 30 of us. Now there's 350. So it's probably a little more difficult to get 350 people saying, oh yeah, you can take any material and share it publicly. But I think once, I guess in my mind, the nature of a co-op, I guess assumes, and we would make it part of the Constitution or whatever. A co-op to me assumes open source, assumes Creative Commons, assumes sharing, and assumes public access. So I wouldn't personally have a problem with it as long as people are cited. And nobody was trying to claim it for their own.
So
But
you're
it's
referring
a
to, like,
question. It's just one of those questions that needs to be addressed.
but like one of the hot sensitive examples would be like somebody's blog post, or what are you referring to? Because when you say wiki, I was just thinking more, I don't know, terms and.
For me, I think blog posts are off bounds, but things that are posted in the forums are open.
But I'm sorry, I think I'm blurring my understanding of between wiki itself and the forums and the whole thing. Like, what are we talking about?
Okay, well, if you remember, all the classes are set up from left to right across the top. From the wiki is the first section. All of that's public. Anybody can always look at that. You don't even have to be a class member for that. But as soon as you move to anything on the right of the wiki, that requires passwords and paid attendance to be part of it. And then within that structure, we had forums, and then we had social mind maps or social bookmarks, and we had mind maps, and we had blogs. The blogs we've always thought were personal or private, but all the others we always thought were open, because forums were always broken down into topics, and people were sharing links or everything. And a lot of that material from the bookmarks, the maps, and the forums all ended up being culled back into the wiki and the lexicon. So there was always some movement back and forth within the class structure.
Yeah.
That actually leads to one point or one question I have is, obviously, if we're running sort of our own little course for ourselves, we might want kind of a temporary new wiki that maybe only has kind of the few concepts that we're working on, instead of being overwhelmed by like this vast, huge wiki. And I'm just curious what system will be used. What system will be used for creating a wiki? So that's one of the tool choices I feel we'd have to make. That I don't know what's best. I don't use a lot of wiki stuff myself.
Wikimedia is the simplest. It's basically how you put any Wikipedia together, and it's open access. And you can just Google Wikimedia and check it out. That's what we used. I wasn't thinking of bringing the knowledge repository over to what we're talking about now. I was thinking of that going into the co-op.
I guess that would be something we'd have to host ourselves once again, like just the same with Big Blue Button, or is there maybe, because it seems like most of the tools we're sort of pulling together here are kind of free hosted tools versus, I don't know if there's a way to host a Wikimedia wiki for free.
Yeah, there's no cost involved in Wikimedia. That's all open source. And I think we're cobbling together everything that works doing open source, which is what we were about anyway. So, and these days, it's what's available is pretty extraordinary. I mean, Big Blue Button is open source. That's all run off of GitHub and Slashdot. So the stuff that's available is pretty amazing. The only place we run into some problems is if we want to play with things that require EDU kind of licensing, or there are a lot of things that are free as long as you have an EDU address. And I don't know. I think we've been able to do really, really well with cobbling things together.
Whatever I can get that, everyone can share or somehow benefit from, just let me know.
Okay.
You
Yeah, I
know,
just
I've
think
already,
I'm thinking if this proves out, if it turns out that we've cobbled together a good teaching platform, and then that it turns out we have material that's reasonably well taught and easily captured, and repeatable. I don't want to say scale. Is repeatable. Then we might want to think about getting an EDU extension for Metacox, because we're still on the hub idea of we would be a place for people to come and share, and kind of a repository and a clearinghouse and some of the other things we talked about. But it looks like our focus is on, at least among the three of it, Roland and Robert and I are wanting to be able to teach in the areas that we're really keen on. And we also would like to see, when we first talked about this, we thought of the three of us and we thought of three women. We thought Paola would be cool, and we'd like to see something, one of the women from Peer-to-Peer and Peeragogy teach. And we were also thinking about Caitlin eventually. So we were hoping to see a little bit of a balance of six of us that would be able to teach some content. And I think that's along the lines of what Howard always wanted, really. He, his whole thing was, what it is up to us. And, he and I are getting older. It would be nice to see this stuff replicated, and people be able to take the tools and the cooperation literacies and the digital literacies and then work them out in their various spheres of interest. And as we do that as open source, then I think that you've got two things you're offering. You're offering actual content, and you're also offering the framework. And then we'll have some experience down the road as that goes along to be able to advise other people as they start.
Just to mention that the two main things that I got so far, well, the three, one of them is an Amazon Prime account, but I do have my Google account, which in theory, they say it's unlimited storage on there. But it's also worth mentioning that the Zurich International School is going all in on Google Classroom, which I haven't really checked out too much, but it's just FYI.
Yeah, I have.
And that may be something I can also explore just simply with that address. But and then the other thing is Office 365 and the whole Microsoft environment. So that's also something I'd be glad to get into playing with. As some of you know, I'm a hardcore OneNoter, and I've seen OneNote being used in collaboration and sharing. I haven't really gone there yet, but I think it's just a matter of just doing it, just learning where's the share button and kind of testing it out. I really love OneNote.
Yeah, I can say from my recent testing, I was trying to figure out kind of what's the best outliner that's out there. So there's Workflowy, there's this one called Dynalist, but actually OneNote is, in my opinion, kind of the most sort of abstract and capable way of kind of dumping ideas and thoughts and clippings and all kinds of things into, and yeah, both mobile and desktop. And I also haven't played with the sharing stuff, but it's definitely
I think you have to, the sharing stuff, if I understand, you have to have a paid account or the student account. I think we'll also allow it for the full features.
To go back to what you were saying, Ted, I think you got to the heart of kind of like what sort of is one of the main ideas here is that whatever we're going to do over the next few weeks is kind of a framework or a template that we're hoping will be, like you said, replicable, and so that's sort of how the tool structure is a big piece of that. So I'm definitely in line with the open source stuff, but then we are using Slack. So I think maybe we could kind of have two kind of recommendations where if you're hardcore open source, like here's all what you need. But if you just want it to be free and you're just a kid or some group that doesn't really care about open source, but you want to learn something with people, then we can say, oh, well, start a Slack. It's totally free. Here's a tutorial how or something like that. So I guess there'd be kind of a free version and then a free and entirely open source version of how we recommend the courses can be run, I guess. And sorry to throw one more thought or idea on top of that is the learning management stuff.
That's the whole, that's where we've come to. You know, this all started out in the 50s as free. And then it went to free as in beer, and then it went to freemium, which was, you know, we'll give you free to capture you, and then we're going to charge you. And now you have to pay for the pro version. And so all that's gone along at the same time that GNU and Richard Stallman and Slash and everybody and GitHub have pursued open source. And then the whole Linux community. So, and I'm heavily I put up with, I tolerate Windows, but I'm a Linux person. And so anytime I hear something like OneNote, I immediately go over to Office Libre and see what's going on over there for free. My immediate instinct to everything that's got a dollar sign is to go find the free version. And yet I don't mind paying for things. I mean, I'm paying for Scoopit. I'm paying for MindMeister. I like the integration of my tasks, and I like how it integrates with Google. So some things seem to be playing well with each other, but then others don't, and that's just because of the marketplace. You've got Apple and Google and Amazon all trying to eat the same baby, and they're going to be eating each other pretty soon. And then you just have all these sheep captured inside of each one of these things, creating their content. So I just have a philosophical difference of opinion about it, but that doesn't keep me from playing with all this stuff. I just, I plan with OneNote, but I still love Evernote, and I've got 8 years of my life in Evernote. But it easily ported over to OneNote with one click. So I went, oh, okay. So there's that. But I've gotten away from even using notes anymore. And I think I've gotten more into using Google Docs and Sheets as my tools when I moved from index cards and Post-it notes and legal pads. So I don't, and then you've got Hypothesis, which works right off your browser tab. So I've sort of gotten away from the notes. I like them. I see the value of them. But for me, everything starts with these stupid little Post-it notes for me, and then goes to legal pads and eventually to a mind map. So for me, OneNote or Evernote are just duplications. The big value that I remember with either of those kinds of systems was if I'm taking a class or something by Howard and I'm surfing all over the web trying to find things, it was really great to be able to snag links and throw them in Evernote or throw them in OneNote, and then I could come back at the end of the week and see everything I grabbed and have a chance to go through it. But lately, I've been stashing everything in Slack tooltips. So, I guess it's just it's different strokes for different folks. Everybody has a different, likes to use affordances that work within their particular learning style.
Whatever works.
I guess the big challenge here with what you just said, and kind of if we're all doing that also in sort of parallel, and we're thinking back about the wikis that we have access to and stuff, is how do we start weaving this together into maybe maps or something, or maybe segments of maps represent kind of whole classes or something like that, so that it can it kind of gains coherence in some way.
Well, I think if we start with a Google Doc, we can then get it to a MetaMap in terms of the tools and the structure that we want to use. And then when we start creating content, we could think about where do we want that, and where's the place to fit in. I know you're in DigiLife, and I think Roland is. And when I look at their map, I about faint. That thing is an encyclopedia, and I don't want that to happen. I'd rather have an atlas than one map. Be able to flip through pages that made sense or were categorized. But I think, for us, we should just jump in the water and get started, and like Howard says, break it and not. Let's just get enough tools together that you could start teaching a class, and Roland could start teaching a class, and then let's just do it, and then we can refine it as we go along. Because I think over the last year we've played with just about every freaking tool that there is. I don't think we've missed much, unless it just came out of a VC startup or Kickstarter in the last couple of weeks. I think we're pretty well on it. What
about a spreadsheet? I mean, does that already exist for sort of everybody's priorities?
Well, we haven't gotten quite to that place yet, but I mean, spreadsheets, slides, Excel, all that stuff works. I think right now we just need to start teaching something and see what happens when we go, okay, now let's do a whiteboard for this part, or let's break out for this part, or let's do a map together, or let's look at this text and let's annotate and comment, and just in the working through of it, because there's the whole video issues of when you start doing things where you're using podcasts and various YouTube videos or whatever within a class that we might find bothersome or troublesome. So I think we just got to try it.
I'm interested to hear any updates or any updates, comments on collaborative mapping. Have you guys managed to take that further at all?
Well, if you're referring to MetaMaps, it's actually, well, the team's only 2 or 3 actual developers, and we've all been doing separate things. So the most recent development is actually the topic card is a lot more nice now, and actually two things I was thinking about recently, because we use a tool called Embedly. So it's a kind of a third-party tool that allows you to embed lots of different things. So what's neat is inside of a topic, you can put like a Google form. So while you're on the map, you double-click a topic, open it up, and then you can enter in some data into a Google form, and maybe that populates a spreadsheet. So you can start doing some pretty interesting things while just on the map. But in terms of collaborative stuff, it's still what it was before, where you can see each person's pointers moving around, and you can see the live updating map and that sort of thing.
But I guess what I was really wondering is have you guys used that with any success in getting together to collaborate on a map, or more than one map?
Well, that's actually a big piece of why I want to do this, is because I'm looking for people to play with me with that sort of thing, right? So,
yeah, I mean, I thought that was going to be your class. Was MetaMaps, pretty much. I thought that Roland was going to come after the journalism aspect, and you were going to come after the map aspect.
Yeah, well, at least concept mapping, and maybe Charles can fill it out with mind mapping. But the one thing I was thinking about our potential kind of prototype course initially would be we could do little like tutorial or presentation things. And I know Roland was saying maybe he would be interested in just taking a snippet of his own workflow and as part of a live session just kind of working us through, like even visually instead of like a text description of, well, I click here, I look at this, and we can see him kind of working. I think that'd be a really neat thing to record as well, just kind of a snippet of somebody's workflow. So that could be something we did each week as well.
Absolutely.
Because it captures a lot, right? Like the tools, you see it happening. It's kind of a lot better than even a blog where it's like a text description of a workflow.
Yeah.
Is that PLN, or what's the difference actually?
Well, that would be knowledge management. PLN is whatever's going on in a learning situation, and that can be within a school or outside of school, but basically in a co-learning sort of a strategy. And then knowledge management is bringing that whole concept over to a workplace. So how Roland incorporates his learning system. Oh, good. Now let's make sure you get Connor drafted into MetaMaps and get him on task. But so how Roland incorporates his personal learning network into his workspace is a knowledge management system. And these days, that's gotten to be huge within corporations. They're now C-level knowledge vice presidents and information presidents who do nothing but take care of the corporate structure of learning.
Very cool. Thank you. That helped a lot, actually.
And then the top of all of that is Knowledge Garden. That's the meta for both of those.
Cool. Now that Connor's here, maybe we can take a quick little break. And it's actually perfect timing. Charles was actually just asking us what's new with collaborative mapping. So
cool.
Hey, Connor, it's a pleasure to connect with you.
Yeah, me too. Sorry that I'm late. I fell asleep earlier this afternoon, and it turns out I needed a lot of extra sleep. So
up late gaming?
No, I mean I guess I was up late a couple of nights in a row, and I'm not usually. So yeah, I'll catch up.
Great.
Cool. So we can either catch up on what we're talking about for this Open Learning Commons or Metacogs course thing, or maybe we just do a quick round of kind of who's who. I think you're the new one here, so we can start with you. And
yeah, sure. Yeah, cool. Well, I'm Connor, and I'm coming from a background in coding. The last 6 or 7 years, I worked a lot extensively on MetaMaps and other open source collaborative technology like Hilo, and a little bit on Lumio, and made some contributions to those. And more recently, I stopped doing so much coding and got more involved in working with KIT, working with youth over the summer, and now I'm focusing a little bit more on learning and learning about design, especially for design for 3D. I mean, I don't come from a background of design, but so I'm just kind of at the beginning of that road, but it's what I'm most interested in right now. And working on, and what else? Just tend towards very interdisciplinary kind of thinking. I took an interdisciplinary undergraduate program, and so it's always about making connections for me, and seeing seeing how things are connected. So that is in part what led to me working on MetaMaps, and that as well as just that sort of understanding and that that idea. Yeah. and then and generally being kind of inspired by this movement of people who have been having online dialogue and looking together at solutions to wicked problems, and how can the necessary sense making and decision making and collaboration happen involved for those issues, which oftentimes ends up being a discussion about tools, but ultimately we need to just like also just do it and sort of. Yeah.
Well, I think you just summarized our whole call so far. A discussion of tools, and we kind of just ended off with, okay, well, we just kind of need to get our feet wet and start playing with stuff as well. Yeah. Sorry, the one thing I would add is another potential we were playing with here is the kind of AI machine learning type direction. And I know you've had some interest in that as well too. So that's something else we're sort of holding on to, is maybe we can learn a little bit of that somewhere along the way.
Yeah, cool, absolutely. Yeah, I'm really interested to learn about that right now too.
Well, I guess I can go quick. Most of you know me one way or another. I actually met Connor, and he's sort of my intro into this whole open source collaborative collective intelligence world. And it was through experimenting, or kind of got hooked on the idea of collective intelligence maybe around the end of 2012, and started trying to self-teach myself, or kind of explore. And that's when I found George Poor and discovered, actually, in around when I was hearing all the kind of memorial stuff about Engelbart, and that's when I sort of started diving into that. So that's a piece of what we're talking about here in terms of a course direction, is the whole intelligence augmentation direction for a course. So AI and IA potentially. And yeah, in around then is when I was playing with the collective intelligence community on Google+, and we were doing similar things as what we've been discussing today, of trying to figure out how to manage community resources and build knowledge together. And that's how I actually bumped into Connor in the first place. And MetaMaps was kind of a piece of the puzzle back then, and it's still very much something I'm holding on to now in terms of how we might use it. So just before you came on, Connor, they were saying, or prodding me that, oh, why aren't we using it, MetaMaps, more for collaboration? And I was saying, well, that's kind of the point of this group for me very much, is to start using it a lot more and playing with the affordances and Slack integrations and that sort of thing for live collaborative mapping. And then potentially that would be a component of maybe a Rheingold course or our own course or something like that.
Cool.
I think it's a natural, and I'm super excited about it. And I wasn't prodding so much as just inquiring, because I haven't caught up in a few months. But you know, I'll come back to also prodding, because I'm totally into that. And Connor, I'm excited, really thrilled about MetaMaps and its potential. And I think you probably heard something about my ongoing discussions with Robert, trying to bring some. Basically, my main thing is I would just be in like dreamland if and when it has the option to do the mind map hierarchy, and then it'll just be like, just get the bugs out and we're good to go. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I guess I'll just sort of continue briefly. I'm obviously really into mind mapping, and yeah, I guess Connor and Jim are the ones that don't know me so much. So let's see. As I might have mentioned, I'm here in Zurich, Switzerland, 7 years. I'm mostly from New York, but also Southern California when I was younger. My main professions are kind of parallel. I guess the longest thing that I've done, which is not so much a profession, is radio. So I've always done community, non-commercial radio, mostly pretty much focused on music, but mixing a lot of different genres. And I'm still doing that here in Zurich. And at different times I've been in the music industry, recording engineer and producer, started a label, produced a bunch of concerts. And I work as a DJ from time to time here as well. But my main gig is what I sum up as language production. So I'm a communications marketing guy, writer, editor, and a teacher of English. And I guess I'm kind of excited about a new client of mine that's an investment bank that's focused on green tech and sustainable investing, and it's and now I'll come back to that in a minute. But the thing that I've been really passionate about and dedicated pretty much since I moved over here, got into the Impact Hub community and kind of discovered the world of social impact and kind of the meeting between the startup and the tech worlds and this social impact world, trying out different startups and especially focusing around collaboration, bringing people together around ideas and projects to make a better world. And there's been this kind of looming 4 years already, something kind of amorphous thing called A Better World, which some of you have heard quite a bit about, which is still kind of alive, but it keeps morphing, and I keep coming across other thought leaders and wise elders and systems and so forth. The one hot one that I'm really quite involved with at the moment is Wise Democracy Pattern Language, which some of you might know about. It's Tom Atlee over in Oregon. And I just sort of fell into this like very intimate core group trying to build a community of practice around this wise democracy stuff. So that's pretty amazing. So just the one last thing, and then I'll be quiet. Is I've been hired to do some writing and kind of editing for this investment bank, and their mission and their values seem to be, and it's still quite kind of early and fresh, but it seemed to be very much in alignment and synchronized with the terms and the values and the concepts I've been like swimming around in for a number of years, and it's just coming very fluidly, and I'm kind of amazed. And so I don't know, stay tuned, but it's pretty interesting. So we'll see. Oh, and as I mentioned to some of you before, Connor, you came on. This week I'm still kind of recovering. There's been a whole series of conferences here in Zurich around the digital space at large, and it was the largest hackathon in Europe. It just finished today, the last few days, Hack Zurich, and the ICO summit and the cryptocurrency finance 2.0 gathering, all converging in this like tiny little area, and yeah, it's been pretty wild.
And you made it to some of this?
I made it to a lot of it. Yeah, not quite everything, but yeah. And I got to shuttle some of the keynote speakers from the hotel to the venue. That was basically my role. And so getting to
yeah,
I have to tell all of you that the most inspiring of those was this amazing guy you may know called Max Stossel, one of the founders of Time Well Spent. And I'm just totally inspired by him in particular, but that whole thing. So it was great.
It's cool.
Thanks for listening.
So I'll go next, Jim March. I'm pretty much a practical guy. I'm a businessman, had a software company that I sold back in 2001 that built expert system and AI system to catch fraud for the banking industry. Since then, I've kind of dedicated myself, since I don't really have to work anymore for money, I dedicated myself to working on problems that probably won't be solved in the economic marketplace because we don't seem to have a way to be solved in using money, but which are very important to our communities. I'm kind of dedicated to these strange problems that nobody else cares about because there's no money involved. So I also work with kind of disadvantaged, disempowered populations, the homeless, mentally challenged folks, the isolated seniors, in an effort to kind of give them a little bit more power and ability to control their own lives. I study Buddhism and try to practice compassion throughout everything that I do. So with those those are the axes, I end up at problems where those things cross. And currently live in Asheville, well, actually in Hendersonville, south of Asheville, but I am working with a collection of about 40 people that are trying to start up a kind of an alternative economy, collaborative collection of people who want to make the community better, and we kind of have to make a living. Most folks have to make a living too. So very much these are all computer related folks. They are involved in various trainings and various levels of involvement in their professional life with the internet and development of software. But we all kind of share a feeling that we don't need to make gobs of money, or if somebody does by accident, he should share it around. So, so anyway, it's an altruistic collection of folks that are not very content with the current state of the economy and where computer development, software development is going. So trying to find a way that we can support each other to have successful lives without having to violate some of our desires to make the world a better place. So I'm not terribly education oriented. I mean, I've spent a lot of my life getting educated. I continue to be educated. I'm not the closest I get to teaching is maybe working with underprivileged youth and trying to figure out how I might give them make deep learning and AI and computers exciting to these kids so that they might consider it as a possible career path. But I don't have a burning desire to teach a class online, but I'd be happy to help in the capacity that I can. But a lot of the conversation around I've taken a couple of Howard's classes. They've been very helpful to me in trying to transition me to a collaborative work and thinking process. But I probably won't participate too much in developing courses online here. And so if that's the direction these calls will go in, then I probably will not participate too much unless you see a particular need. Anyway, so there you go. Open for any questions. Jim March out.
Thanks, Jim. I just think about this.
Oh, you're muted, Ted.
Kind of,
Sorry.
This balance between co-learning and learning, or education versus, collaborative learning, pedagogy. I mean, I guess, Jim, you've had exposure to some or all of those juxtapositions. I think, if I understand, I mean, we're pretty much about this co-learning concept, and not so much sort of getting up, and standing above in any particular way.
I'm Ted Newcomb, and irritated that my camera's on the wrong side of this monitor. So I'll just talk to the stupid camera. I know everybody from Howard and his classes for Enlivening Edge. Been very interested in lifelong learner, have 3 master's degrees, taught college, did a lot of teaching in churches and when I was a minister. been really captivated by personal learning networks and knowledge management systems and LMSs and knowledge gardens for the last 8 years. And was sort of the den mother for Howard's alumni for the first couple of years, and then we brought it back to life a couple of years ago, and it kind of ebbs and flows, comes and goes. But there's about 350 alumni now, so I have a pretty large network of people that I stay in touch with. And then that network has expanded over the last 8 years to something entirely unmanageable at this point. And just, I'm very focused, or I find myself in cahoots with Roland and Robert and Metacogs because we're all of the same mind, ethically, in terms of tools and platforms and collaboration and open source and what we'd like to see happen within technology as it moves forward and as it addresses these wicked problems. And a bit like Jim, I'm very focused on my local community and volunteering with my local senior center and teaching them tech and helping them with tech, and also very big on getting a community garden started here. We're in court. It's been going on for 2 years, but we'll eventually win. It's just greed versus need. And they get tired after a while. So that's sort of my focus.
So I guess it's my turn. So I'm a journalist at in Brussels at a newspaper, a business newspaper, The Tijd, and I'm a newsroom manager actually, so more into organizing what's happening in the newsroom. I also write columns about the impact of technology on society. And I have a special interest in everything virtual reality, augmented reality, virtual worlds, and virtual communities related. It was through those experiences in everything virtual that I learned about modern day knowledge management, and that I also learned about the existence of Howard Rheingold. So I participated in a number of courses he gave, where I met Ted and many other people here. And so I'm very much involved now into two things actually. How to organize knowledge in collaboration with others, and also how to organize communities, virtual communities also. And both subjects are related. For instance, my newspaper has an audience of entrepreneurs in Belgium, and one of the things is how can we stop considering them as a passive audience and rather treat them as a newspaper being a facilitator of some of the things happening inside that community, and a facilitator also of the knowledge that community is embodying somehow, and how can we help them to manifest that knowledge and get new knowledge. So that's a rather different way of looking at journalism, I think, even these days. I know there are a lot of people like Jeff Jarvis talking about those things, but there are also newspaper editors talking about it. But actually, I don't see a very much happening on the terrain. I don't see very many newspapers actually doing what they preach sometimes. So maybe we don't need newspapers to do such things. I don't know, but it's so those two things are of interest to me: knowledge management and how to organize communities. Whether we call those communities virtual or not, it's not that very important. I think every community is up to a certain degree virtual, and also up to a certain degree real. So it's about these things. I also find myself a bit connected to what Jim is saying about how to help communities which are. I'm catering now for entrepreneur communities, but there are many other communities in a city such as Antwerp, where I live, where one could say that they really are into trouble, and the question is, how can we help them? It's a very different issue of knowledge management, I think. If you only talk to highly educated entrepreneurs, it's a different set of people than Moroccan youth who don't know what to do with their lives. So I'm also very much involved in something very physical, such as karate, because I discovered that actually sports clubs are very effective in bringing together people. And I don't know how this relates to the things we are doing here. I still have to find that out. But to my personal development is also related to Buddhism, which helps me to understand about compassion and about how understanding how the mind works. And so all that is like a big cluster, and many of the threads are coming together here in this group. That's about it.
Thanks, Roland. It's great to meet you.
I think, sorry. A couple of things that seem to be threads. Buddhism and Taoism seem to be a thread for most of us. And I think everybody seems to be in some kind of a process of integration, trying to put the various pieces together, both in terms of how does technology work with whatever our particular life interests are, and then where does that go in the map of our futures, and how does that integrate with our communities for the various wicked problems. I know in my case I have grandchildren, so I'm just extraordinarily focused on air, food, and water because I don't see how they're going to have any of it in the next 20 years if things don't radically change. And so that got me to put my feet back on the ground and start getting local again. But anyway, I just think we all seem to be processing and integrating. Also seem to be concerned on bigger, larger issues.
I just to mention also, yeah, I'm very much feet on the ground here because I have two young daughters, age 3 and 7. So I'm very grateful to be in a place with amazing water and air, enough organic food. But yeah, definitely have that perspective of the many generations to come.
I would say too, it came up in this Twitter feed today in Metacogs that rational arguments don't work when you try and resolve these wicked problems. And I think part of the reason so many of us go to the sports clubs or community gardens is that is where it works. That really is shoulder to shoulder with neighbors and different perspectives and other points of view. And it's the polis in the Greek sense of the word. It's where real politics happens. And I just think the wicked problems have to be solved shoulder to shoulder. And you have to
find the language. You have to hear their point of view and realize it's valid for them, even if it isn't the one that you come to. And that most of these things get resolved at emotional levels or at need levels or crisis levels, and not rational. If this stuff could be resolved in a classroom, it would have been done thousands of years ago. But we talk about the bazaar and the cathedral marketplace. And, we just had Farm Aid last night. So for me, it's Monsanto versus the local farmer. That's the wicked problem right there. Is the difference of establishing communication between those two groups and then helping them see if they can't identify problems in common, and then are there strategies that would allow somebody as evil as Monsanto to maybe do something good for a community, and they don't think they're they just think they're top of the heap in capitalist world. But I think that's, for me, it's sort of pattern recognition. I know what doesn't work, and I'm trying to figure out what does. And like Roland says, how do you do that virtually and augmentatively in real space?
Well, we've been on since the VMA call for about an hour and a half, but I don't know. It seemed like you were saying, Jim, that maybe classes aren't exactly the core of what you're interested in engaging in, but I'd be interested to hear kind of what did draw you, and also the looking forward to maybe next week's, what kind of ways can we maybe play synchronously or asynchronously, either pick an article to read or something about what you were saying earlier about getting our feet wet. And so maybe we can agree on something like that. And then find a way that, like you said, that our intersections, how could we play together and record it so that we could share kind of what you said earlier, how to make it replicable so we can share with others.
When Jim was asking, when he first, I think it was you or was it your friend, Jim, that was asking what resources were we aware of communities that are actually having success, that are working at local levels successfully?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of on the ground, I'm working, I run a computer lab for the homeless. I have a hackathon in January on finding ways to help isolated seniors using technology. I have all these folks that want to do something, but we're all kind of lost as to how to go about that. And I'm the guy that approaches it from, well, what if we tried to make an economy that uses all the strengths and benefits of this system that has money, but what if we use different unit of measure kind of thing that might lead to focusing more people's time, probably all volunteer time, but time towards issues that are valuable to our communities, but which don't really fit into a market, a money market way of looking at things. It's not an allocation of, I'm an economist by training and a statistician, and I understand the weaknesses of our competitive market. I mean, I love it. It's a great place to be, and it does a lot of things really well, but it also misses the mark on a lot of things. So I'm actually on the ground trying to think about a kind of a coexisting economy. Right now, it kind of looks like a collaborative volunteer network or a work share network, but a way that people who want to make their communities a better place can go online and find jobs to do, and At the same time, there may be some things that we could get paid for to make sure these folks get to make a decent living. And I don't know. It's a very it overwhelms me, trying to think. I have to remind myself, well, the money system kind of took a few thousand years to come around. So maybe some other economy might take another few thousand years. But I am working, I try to think of things that are very practical. What can I do to improve the quality of life of the homeless community? That might involve technology. I know a lot about technology. What can I contribute to helping people coordinate their efforts to make their communities better? So, but I am down on the ground. I live in a complex of about 50 houses. Pretty much, it's a senior retirement community, and I make sure that everybody's technology is working. I spend probably 3 hours a week checking in with people, making sure their printer's down or something doesn't work. And I kind of keep it all humming, And so, how would I propagate that throughout my entire community so that people kind of felt like, especially people who didn't know much about technology, felt like they could actually keep connected and not have to worry so much about the technology. Anyway, so I don't know if that helps identify it, but I would just say I'm somebody who's out there. I'm confronting problems, head on, and happy to make lots of mistakes.
I think that's great, and for doing what you do, and I hope somehow we can figure out, how to keep connected and keep the dialogue moving, because I think that connection to the ground and that community and those efforts and concerns are really vital universally, and just how to kind of transfer and translate could be one of our roles or missions.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree.
I do work with a group called Code for Asheville. They're part of Code for America. It seems to be a place where programmers or computer people that want to help their communities naturally aggregate. It's a meetup, and I always find that those folks are interested in volunteering their time to make their communities better. I'm not 100% behind the basic philosophy of trying to make government work better for people. I think there's a lot of problems with government, if we're talking big government. But I do find it's a good place for me to meet folks who want to help me try and attack these problems.
There's a woman, maybe you might know her, but Susan Michael. She's there. I'm pretty sure she's in Asheville, and I just mentioned her because she's in this very small group that I mentioned earlier around Tom Atlee and the Wise Democracy pattern language. Could be an interesting contact. I don't know. She's been involved with Tom and and that project for some years. So it might be nice just to have a coffee, or I don't know.
Sure. What's her name? Susan Michaels?
Yeah, I can send you her contact.
Okay, that'd be great.
Yeah.
There's a lot of interesting stuff going on. The South, in the United States, the South is not held in very high esteem. And for all of I came from California. I lived in California for 50 years and in Northern California for about 40. And coming to the South, there's some real strategic strengths in terms of compassion and caring and hospitality and politeness. All of these systems that are examples of markets where the money isn't involved, but where it really makes a difference in the community. And then I also get to interact with a religious, very religious community, which, they're always surprised when I tell them that my church is a Lakota Sioux and Ipi ceremony, and they they kind of go, am I supposed to understand what you said?
Oh, yeah, great. Yeah, you are supposed to, actually.
Yeah, why? Anyway, so it's an interesting place. I always wanted to live in a foreign country, so I moved to the south.
Right.
Yeah, I resonate with Jim. I spent 4 years, every 6 weeks, every 4 years, we would go camping in, just outside of Hendersonville, in the Smokies and Pisgah Falls, and pioneer camps. So that's all. And Hendersonville was the last point of civilization before going off into the mountains. So I very familiar with the territory and the mindset. And these are CCC, Great Depression people, and you actually see the timber on the roads.
Right.
So
We still have log cabins up there.
I can smell them, but they're resilient and interesting place to try and work that out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's part of the Appalachian Mountains, which has a very independent culture.
Yeah. Okay, so Robert, what are we doing for next week? Between now and then, what are we doing?
Well, I actually haven't combined all the syllabuses yet, but typically at the top of each one was this article, As We May Think. I don't know if everybody's already read that multiple times. I actually personally haven't, but I think it'd be neat if we tagged it with hypothesis as we go.
Yes, that would be a nice idea.
Yeah.
So we do have a hypothesis group, but I realized from experimentation that no groups exposed from it. You don't get an RSS feed exposed from groups, even if they might be public. So we might just choose kind of a hashtag. Or I guess if it's just one article, we don't need the hashtag. We can just all go to the same link. So I actually put it, I'll paste it again at the bottom just so it's kind of focused. It's somewhere here in this stream. Here we go.
Jim, just to mention, I privately sent you Susan's email, if you see in the chat, Jim.
Okay, thanks so much.
Also, just to mention, everyone, as I emailed some of you, every other week I won't be able to make this time pretty much because I have my daughters. So, that just might be, I can just come in every other week, or if there's a way to move it a couple hours earlier, that would probably work for me with my daughters when they're here. So let's see how it goes.
Okay.
I think we worked this time backwards from Roland. I think this was a good time for him. And that's how we got to the time zones of Roland.
Yeah,
well,
sorry, go ahead.
It just for me it depends from week to week actually. So I just went for this time because most weeks this is feasible for me, but it could very well be that doing it a few hours earlier would also work. So I don't know about the others.
Well, it works for me either case.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm flexible on Sunday.
Yeah, me as well.
No. The advantage of that is that he never sleeps. I really think he is a cyborg. In fact, he really is the proof that the Turing test has been very well. He succeeded in it. Well, but there's only this one tiny thing. He just never sleeps. So that's the only way one can tell that he is a cyborg.
Well, I won't go to a high school reunion because they accuse me of being Dorian Gray. But I do sleep. I sleep 8 hours a day.
Wasn't very convincing.
Well,
It's just broken up into little bits and bytes, right? Is that what it is?
that doesn't mean at once.
Yeah. And not all in the same day.
Well, day is a relative. It's retired. It's just the clock just goes. Half the time I have to be reminded what day it is.
Well, in terms of time, I mean, just to paint the picture, I mean, I do have my girls every other weekend, which now includes Sunday nights. And but if it's 7 o'clock here, then I can set them up with a movie, which always works. But if it's after bedtime, it's after bedtime.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Are you and Roland?
Yeah, we're in the same time zone.
Yeah.
Okay, so that would move it up to 1 o'clock for Robert and Connor.
Yes.
Okay, and it's 10 o'clock for me. It's no big deal.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, 7 o'clock it will be.
Okay, and otherwise we can just play asynchronously in the Slacks, and the one other piece is just sort of figuring out what tools work, like what tools we want to use potentially. So for now it's just hypothesis and this one article, but we'll think about, because yeah, Big Blue Button would be really neat if we could host that. I don't know if anybody's played with it, but it's open source, as Ted said. But
yeah, and I can talk with Howard. He has a pro account with them, or I can sneak around the developer mode. I just have to load and boot Ubuntu onto Windows. And for you, and for all you coders, do you now know that you can put Apple on a Windows machine?
Really?
Yes, you can, because Windows went to Linux. So now everybody's in the same code.
Oh, interesting. Rob, I need an invitation to the hypothesis group, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I probably need that too. I'm not sure.
Okay, well, after this call, I'll kind of aggregate together a bunch of things and maybe little timings and requests or something like that, and I'll share it to the Open Learning Commons Slack.
Okay.
Yeah,
is there something about the Slack that maybe, I don't know, let's see, I have it on my browser here. I didn't really take any time, but what can you highlight or catch me up or guide me to where I need to go there?
Well, really, this is all brand new. So if you just join all the channels, it's all pretty much fresh new stuff. And whatever happened in this call today in the general channel. So, but in the general channel is basically, if you go back to the beginning, see my initial thinking, and it's just a list of these syllabuses that seem to represent this course we're sort of thinking of doing, but different iterations of it from different people, and also the new media reader stuff. So it's kind of just got to put them together in some sort of linear way so we can do it week to week. And hopefully, yeah, the next live session would be a little bit more collaborative, and maybe we do kind of like I said, live collaborative mapping, and maybe then would be a good time also for Roland or somebody else to volunteer to do like a little snippet of their workflow around some certain thing. And I think Roland is somewhat already prepared for that. I don't know, but I'll volunteer him. So.
I can make a screencast of it also if you want to.
Yes, since he actually does work, we should have him do that.
Okay.
And according to my Google Start page, Robert, we are now involved in 12. We are involved in Digo, MetaMaps, GitHub, HackMD, Hypothesis, Metacogs, Matrix Cafe, SMC Alumni, Trello, brand account details with Google, and Lumio. Did I miss anything?
I think you did, but
well, we just need a map of this whole system, so it's not just a linear thing. We need to take the flows and describe the flows.
I created a Metacogs start page with Google because of all these things.
Cool. Well, I think that's it for now then. Until next week.
Sweet.
Okay. See you.
Awesome.
Yep.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Have a good week.
All the best.
Cheers.